Hello and welcome to Trainz Luvr. Today we are starting a new series. Let's build a layout. I've documented a lot of progress on the layout since 2019. You're watching this in 2021, so you can imagine there is 2 years of videos that need to be edited. I've chosen to spend time building the layout rather than editing videos. In hindsight, maybe I should have been editing the videos while I was building the layout, but then I would not have made as much progress. So let's toot that intro and start with the build. Let's take a look at the space now for the layout. What you're looking is the outside of the room and you're seeing the bench for the staging. The layout set at 54 inches off the floor. Being N scale, that makes it about chest height and gives you the action view of the models basically. The walls have been repainted and refinished and everything is ready for the new bench work. You can see some lumber on the floor. The room's 22 by 13 feet. It's about somewhat irregular shape, it's rectangle. But let's take a look at some of the layouts, or one of the main layouts I used for the inspiration for my build, at least at the time when I started building this. So what you're seeing here is the old LDSig website. It used to be at macrodin.com, but they've taken that down, and luckily I've saved a mirror of some of the things I liked there. Right now they don't have much, and it's kind of too bad. Well, anyways, this is Mark Lestico's Cascade subdivision. It was a Union Pacific Railroad that he built, and I'll show some videos, and I'll post a link to his channel on YouTube as well. But this is one of my primary inspirations for my layout, not necessarily for the location or the era or whatnot, but the design and style that it was built. You can see it was featured in some publications and scale railroading and whatnot. And Mark has done an amazing job here detailing a lot of things that I've used as a reference to build my layout, or at least start building my layout. And here is his layout plan. He actually had like 3 peninsulas, but this was built in a 2-car garage, I think. So I think that this layout is gone now because Mark has moved someplace else. But I've liked the fact that he had a lot of action in a space, and I thought maybe I can make skinny bench work and fairly skinny aisles, I suppose, 2 feet, but they're not ideal for something like operating and whatnot. Although I mean, he's done it and it seemed to have worked for him. And so when you look down, this is what uh, was the process that he built, and I thought like, wow, that's pretty cool. So he used a domino construction um, made out of, I guess, pieces of plywood and then crosses connecting them, stringers, and then you can see a backdrop holding the back of uh, these bulkheads, and then he had a sub-road bed on top. And I thought that at the time, this was like a best thing after sliced bread. So I proceeded to move and get lumber for all this build, and I've settled just the way he did on a foot depth, 12 inches, so 11/7/8 basically, and then a backdrop was 1/4, and then I was going to put another domino without the backdrop to the other side, like this. So I wouldn't really butt 2 backdrops together, but to be just one backdrop domino connected to it, and then another domino without the backdrop on the other side, and then I was gonna build the benches because he used the legs and whatnot. He built differently the support, but it doesn't really matter because these dominoes uh, are all the same size, they're the same dimensions, and so they were sort of a factory line construction process, and you'll see that in my videos. And so when you look at oh yeah, so he had a schematic diagram of his railroad. I mean, that was amazing too, and the trains that were running on it, all the sidings and whatnot. And you can see here, one train length is basically 12 feet. That was his LD or layout design element size. And these are all the areas or stops. And here is some of the benchwork that he built at the beginning of his construction. And you can see, I mean, to me, that looked pretty cool. And there was a lot of storage space underneath. And he actually cut into the benchwork to do all the terrain. So a nice thing about this was that all the trains are at the same level, and he was modulating uh, the, the scenery. There were no grades that N-scale trains had to. By the way, this is an N-scale. If you didn't notice, there were no grades that the N-scale trains had to surmount. You know, there were no issues about stalling or anything like that. And you can see this was his dispatcher's office. I thought, well, I'm gonna do something like this. That's pretty cool. And let's go and jump into AnyRail, and I'll show you what I've done. So here we are in AnyRail 6. That's just a layout design program I use for quick iterations. I like AnyRail 6 because you can iterate very fast, unlike the Third Planet, which is more of a CAD program. And unless you've done CAD before, it's rather difficult. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's hard to iterate fast. In AnyRail, I mean, you can mock things up very fast, and then, you know, if you don't like it, throw it out. You won't lose that much time. Here is basically the room, 22.5 by 13 feet. And I had some obstacles in this corner electrical panel. Have you seen it in the video as well? And you've seen the previous videos, a moment in time, the entrance was here. This is the entrance now here. And remember, the benchwork was started here, and so let's just turn that on. And you can see there is 11 or 12 tracks, and then I've put the main line on the shortest track so that you maximize the amount of storage you have for your trains. And this is yard basically that connects the railroad. So the railroad is one big loop, and I like that, and I suppose I lucked out because your trains will restage automatically once they complete a circle or loop around your railroad. Although, I mean, railroads don't loop, but for us, railroaders, model railroaders, we have to compromise on things. You know, I could have done point to point, and this is technically point to point. It's just that I don't have to restage things once trains once they've done their run. The main line has about 116 feet of track, and these are just mock-ups. What you're seeing these things in 2021, but the layout was started in 2019, and that first video of construction was 2019, and 2019 December, and this layout you're seeing here, this is November, end of November 2021. So I've been playing with layout look for a long time while I was building bench work and doing the other room construction, whatnot. And I have to admit, I still don't have a plan. It's kind of unfortunate, but I'm struggling. So let's just turn the door entrance here. This is I've actually made this a lift up bridge. It's a lift gate, and you'll see in the videos how I've done that. And this is a lift up section that provides access to the electrical panel. So what I wanted to do actually is let's turn the main line off, and I'll turn the layout design elements on. And you can see that I've divided the railroad into layout design elements or areas that comprise this railroad. I've named the railroad Newbridge and Lockport just as a play on the uh, streets and areas in my neighborhood where I live. And I've also picked other streets that sounded cool. And so that's what you're seeing here. This is purely fictional railroad. I guess you can say proto freelance. I don't have any specific prototype that I'm modeling in. It's something like a generation, 25 years, late 60s, early 90s that the railroad would span. Well, I guess that's 30 years, something like that. Simply because I didn't want to struggle with steam on N scale or in N scale, and doing 60s, late 60s to early 90s will give me a very broad range of diesels, basically from the first, second, and third generation. I suppose third generation too. The railroad is something that I've found out later on. Uh, it's a bridge railroad. Doesn't really have any specific prototype, as I said, and I didn't want to base myself into a prototype because I don't really have a preference for any. I like them all, and I wanted to see all the railroads come through my railroad and interact. Therefore, it's a bridge railroad. This fictional place, Newbridge and Lockport, is some place where all the other railroads have to go through because I don't know, there is nowhere else to go. And so, CN, CP, UP, KCS, SP. I mean, I don't recognize the history or whatever happened. So, if some railroad that happened to not exist anymore passes through, well, in my world, they're still around. And, they will all bring goods to this railroad because there will be some industries on it, or they will just pass through as a manifest freight or unit trains that just come and go. And, there's going to be hopefully interaction between these things. Uh, the layout design elements of these areas are sort of made based on a train length times 1.5, between 1.5 and 2. And so the idea here is that you don't want your train to be leaving one area and entering the other. And as they say, the beginning of your train, head of your train is in one town and the end is in the other. So um, this is basically what I was working on. This is actually two, but I think I'm kind of like split between 1.5 and 2 times the train length. And basically with my selected 7-foot train length, I can have 15 60-foot boxcars and two SD45s and a caboose in a train. And that basically dictates my siding. I don't plan to have siding in every single space here on the layout. Newbridge will be the main classification yard, and Lockport is supposed to be some kind of a seaport. And uh, I'm just going to turn another layer on here for industries that I was thinking to have. And you can see now the LDEs are overlapping. So this is the industries now that were supposed to be on the layout, and there's about I don't know, a dozen or half a dozen, I suppose. I also have a branch line that goes here, and I figured I'll use this space, and this could be like a separate facility, and perhaps like an ethanol or wood chip or something like that. That's on its own. Um, it creates a pinch point here, which is not ideal, but I can squeeze through, and so I guess that's all it matters. And you can see here that the space for the most aisles is about 28 inches. Pinch points are about 20, 22, and this is 18 or 19. It's not ideal. But then there are these larger areas here where operators could potentially pass each other and whatnot. And I'm just going to turn the other train off now. And I'm going to turn the LD is off as well, and we can take a look at something else. And, so the idea was that once the main direction would be westbound, I suppose, because that's the area that's closer to the classification yard. I didn't want to have the yard dividing the railroad in half, because then you get two short runs versus one long run. So a train might come out of staging, go westbound, and then come to the yard. They might take and drop some cars off, might not, and then they just continue the way. I'm not sure whether the uh, trains from outside will actually stop. They might stop at the yard and the Lockport area and then interact there, or I might have actually interchange track someplace with them. When you do interchanges, it just makes it more interesting because when you drop the cars off someplace else, then you can have your local go and pick those cars up and drop some other cars for them. It just creates another job on the railroad. And I mean, if you're into operations, then it just makes it more interesting. Although I think Lockport might have their own small yard and switching, because you can see I want to have like a warehouse district and an intermodal facility, and usually like grain elevators on the ports. And Lockport, I thought first it would be a seaport, but then uh, last few months I've kind of been warming up towards um, river ports, and I'm in Canada, so there is a large port on St. Lawrence River, and I thought that would be interesting, and so I might use some of that as inspiration to build. I don't think it matters whether it's a seaport or a river port. I mean, they all have interesting things that happen there. And I can just turn the main track on, or turn the industries off, and then we can take a look at some of the other things. So this was one of the yard designs that I was considering of doing. Actually, I mean, it's not mine. This layout is something I've discovered in several, or maybe this year, 2021. I wish I actually knew about the layout um, when I started building this, because I probably would not have built two peninsulas. I would have built just one and then have a deeper benchwork. It's the Tenino Western, and it's based on the Pacific Northwest. Tyler, um, I've just the last name escapes me at the moment. I'm sorry about that. And so I've seen his track plan. I lifted his yard because I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, he's got the class tracks here, and there is two arrival departures, and then there is a scale. There's some clean out track as well for locomotives. The entire engine facility is pretty cool too. And then I had to rearrange things, but the freight house is well here. I moved the depot on the other side. That's just one option. I have another option that I'm working on, and I'm not really sure whether I'm going to go with that or not. And not there. This one here. So ignore this. That's just a piece of benchwork that might go here. The problem with this design is that might not have enough room to put all the engine facilities and everything else. But then again, I mean, how much do you need? I would like to have the turntable and be able to turn the diesels around. Otherwise, I mean, you really just need storage tracks, and everything else is just fluff. Unless you have operationally some kind of a reason for the locomotives to go there. Let's say the foreign power comes and then they stop here and then they have to refuel or something. I guess you make it a part of the run. Most of the times your locomotive facilities just sit there collecting dust unless they're part of the operations, right? Uh, the nice thing about moving the locomotive facility here is that then it frees the peninsula for some larger industry, and that might be another option to explore. So, anyways, that's where it stands right now. I'm not sure where it's going to go. Um, might be something else totally. I mean, if people have ideas, I'm open to them too. Hopefully, before I actually get anything committed. Um, Interestingly enough, you can see here it says Pico fine scale. I've studied with microengineering, and for a long time I thought I would do microengineering. Back in 2019, when I was starting the construction, I was trying to decide whether I should go ME or Pico. And after reading a lot of forums, I chose microengineering and really should have chosen Pico. I chose microengineering because of the look, but really I should have chosen Pico because of reliability and ease of use. Microengineering, in my opinion, is very fiddly. It's not for me. I like to, mishandle my track sometimes, and microengineering is not forgiving in that way, and it just doesn't feel right in my hands. And so after 2 years, I've decided to switch track. I actually had a main line put down temporarily with tacks and then thumbtacks, and then I took it off, and now I'm in Pico, and I like Pico better. I can almost like Kara, you can put it together and dismantle it, and nothing will happen. With microengineering, I feel if I put it together and just temporarily secure it, if I try to take it apart, something's gonna go wrong. Anyway, let's wrap this video for now. What you're seeing is the next video. We're going to be building some benches to hold dominoes. I've opted to build them at the 24-inch width that you can see here. I think that was probably the narrowest it would go without toppling because they're skinny and tall. But I wanted to have some space to store things underneath, and they turned out pretty good. They're fairly robust, and there is a surface underneath it. Is a shelf, and then dominoes go on top of this. But that's coming up next in the next video. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more.